Welcome, everyone, to our second Wave Behind the Scenes interview with the author of our #1 article on Wave's 20 article reading list on global careers. We're pleased to have Dr. Annabelle Harzing with us as we celebrate her timeless and seminal paper, The Persistent Myth of High Expatriate Failure Rates, that was published in 1995 in the International Journal of Human Resource Management. So congrats again, Annabelle, and thanks for joining us today. So you have your paper that made it to the top of our list. Actually, you have two papers that made it to the top 10, but we're going to be focusing on the #1 paper, The Persistent Myth of Expatriate Failure Rates. And when we informed you about the news, you said this is one of your first published studies. So can you share with our viewers the story behind this phenomenal paper?
Thank you so much. Yes, and actually it wasn't even one of the first, it was the first academic article that I ever published. And like the other paper that's in the top 20, the Bears, Bumblebees and Spiders paper, they were both linked to my PhD. And the 1995 paper was the first, and that really came out of my literature review in the first year of my PhD, because I was studying the role of expatriates in controlling foreign subsidiaries. But when I did my literature review, I found that expatriate failure was really a big topic in the literature. And nearly every article that I would read about expatriates would talk about the big failure rate. And they were doing that basically to justify research on the topic of expatriation. But then when I started looking at the references that they used, I couldn't really find any empirical evidence for that claim. So I was really puzzled, and I thought I would want to find out where this claim comes from. So I went through all of the 30 articles that I could find in the whole citation network. And that wasn't easy, because when I started my PhD, there was no internet yet. So it meant going to the library, copying the articles and tracing everything back. But I couldn't really find any empirical evidence. And I discovered that it was just miscitation of 3 core articles in the fields, and then citing them again and again and again, that had established this myth. So I was quite proud of that work, but then I thought, what do I do with this? And then I thought, maybe I can publish it. So I asked my supervisor, and he isn't really in the field of international HRM or international business, really. And he said, well, there's this journal called International Journal of HRM, and that sounds like it might be a good outlet. So why don't you try sending it there? So I did, and I had a very kind reviewer. And he only suggested, and I'm saying he because I know who it is, he only suggested 1 or 2 minor changes, which I did in a few hours. So it was a really pleasant start of the publication process, and really nice for an early career academic, because it can be a brutal process, as we all know. So that was a very happy experience. And then when I look back at this article just recently, when I heard the news, because I hadn't read it for at least 15 years, I must admit I cringed a little, because I found the writing style a bit clumsy. But then again, I had very little writing experience at that time. And I'm not sure how many people know this, but I never enrolled in a formal PhD program. So when I did my PhD, started my PhD in the Netherlands 30 years ago, it was quite normal to just do your PhD on the side whilst working as an academic. So you would do your PhD part-time while you worked as a lecturer, but it did mean that I didn't get any training during my PhD students. I didn't have all this coursework. And I had supervisors, but they were very hands-off. So I absolutely had no clue how to write an academic article. But I did enjoy the research for this article, getting to the bottom of this. As I've mentioned before in an interview I've done in the IB Frontline series with Ilgaz Arikan, I wanted to be a detective when I was young. So if I read that paper now, it looks a bit like a detective story, like documenting my investigations in real time. And now I'm always told, and I also tell my own students, an academic paper is not a detective story. They don't want to hear about all the blind alleys you went into and all the routes you followed. They want a coherent story, but it worked for this article.